Yo, what's up everybody? My name is Clemens and I'm the producer, the DP, as well as the editor for Honestly It's Just Me, a film that we made together with Yoshi. So today we're going to do a little bit of like a film breakdown and just a deep dive into an understanding of what made this film come to reality. And we're going to start with just watching the film one whole time and just thinking about, thinking back about the different scenes and how we shot them. And then after watching one time, I'll share a little bit about our process, how we went through conceptualizing the entire film and how we did our shoots and a lot of hiccups that happened along the way. So let's get right into it. So if you haven't seen this film already, it's on our Instagram and you can also see it on YouTube. I remember shooting this film. We actually originally planned 2 days only, but there was a shot that we didn't really like because we got chased out of a venue and we had to find another venue. So we actually did a third shoot, which is the reason why we released this film so late. There was a lot of things I wanted to try with this film, definitely. But the whole reason why I did this film was really because I found this song on Spotify. I sent it to Yoshi because I thought he would really like this song. And a few weeks later, I was like listening to it again. I was like, it would be dope if I made a film to this. I have no idea what's the premise or like any storyline or any narratives I want to push. But I thought I just could see visuals in my head listening to this song. So Yoshi gathered his dancers, these 7 very talented dancers, and we kind of worked together, a very collaborative kind of mindset to make this film a reality. We originally planned the 2 shoots, the first shoot to be a very early morning shoot in nature, right, in a field kind of setting. And the second shoot was supposed to be in a studio, something very controlled where we could play a lot with lighting and masking and angles and all that. Naturally, it was a little bit more confined, but I think we definitely made it work with a smaller space. I was very adamant about doing not just a morning shoot, but I wanted something like a dawn kind of shoot, right? So it's very early in the morning. I think our call time was like 5:30 a.m. We started shooting at 7, I remember, and we got one shot at our main location, Gardens by the Bay, but we got chased out because apparently you need a permit even when it's non-commercial. So we had to rush over to an alternate location, which was Lakeside Gardens, and that's where we shot this very big field shot that didn't make it into the final film because by the time it was easily like 10 a.m. already, there were a lot of people like running and cycling around, so we could see like this a lot of people in the background just moving, and we didn't want that. We wanted it to be more still. So when we were editing, Yoshi and I, we were right here at this table and we were looking at the shot and we were like, I don't think it really is that nice, to us right now. So we were contemplating a reshoot, and yes, we went ahead and did a reshoot. On the third day, we went to Botanic Gardens. That was just last week only. And we reshot some of the scenes, the field scenes. Yeah, and that's why you see the lake in the shot. That's actually from Botanic Gardens. We didn't use the field shot from Lakeside at the end of the day. Yeah, because simply it was just too distracting. So let's talk a little bit about the second day first, right? In the studio. So what I really wanted to do was to be able to shape the light a lot and play around with things like shadows. So for half of the shots that we got in the studio, we actually set up a C-stand with a boom arm. We put a 300D Mark II up there with a reflector, and we just kind of just beamed it down, right? We just set it to 100 and we just smacked it all the way down onto the dancers. And YK, so YK is kind of like our main character, right? We see her the most in the film. She is doing things like stepping into the light, she's in the center. We get this really like defined kind of looks on the face. So for example, in this shot, we also rented a fog machine to go with it to just kind of add a little bit more like visual interest in the scene. We took a few shots of YK walking in, but we used this in the end because we realized that the fog was kind of like at the start, but when YK walked in, right, so we can see like there's a lot of fog moving at the left hand side of the screen, but then we also see like YK as she walks in, the fog kind of dissipates, right, it disappears. So it's really nice, and something that I kind of forgot, right, because we didn't really like mark where she was supposed to stop ish. We didn't do manual focus at all, right? I was using a 2470 f 2.8 from Canon, so it's an autofocus lens. So we just used autofocus like throughout the entire film, right? I didn't really see a need to kind of pull focus or anything, but because of there was only fog in the shot, the camera actually focused on the fog first, and with YK coming in from the back, it kind of focused only on her halfway through. So we kind of accidentally created a rack focus kind of look, which turned out super nice in the final shot. So that was something that I was quite happy with, and we actually, decided to use it because we decided to use this shot because of that rack focus kind of look in this specific take. And like I was saying, we were using just a singular one point lighting, just one overhead. So we just got YK to kind of stand directly underneath it, not exactly underneath, right? Because we would see this really strong shadows around the nose bridge area. So we got her to tilt the head slightly outwards. That's why you kind of see a little bit more of the chin area and a bit of the neck area, right? Because she's looking outwards. So her face can kind of catch the light, right? So we see a bit of the highlight on the forehead, right? So it's edited definitely. So there's lesser highlight than how it was in the actual shot. But something that I'm really happy about is that we have this very defined lines, shadows around the cheekbone area and neck area. Because of just how the light is situated, we see almost this kind of like a mask around the face that comes out really nice, right? Because for me, my art style is heavily focused on shadows and negative space. I really love kind of cutting the face using shadows and light. So this shot was really doing it for me. And something that I was really appreciative of was that the studio was really blacked out, right? So we only had that one lighting, and that's why we see this so much negative space on the left and on the right side of the subject. So it really just focus, you have to look at YK at the start of the film, and she creates this eye contact with the audience, right? She's looking almost because of the neck and the chin going up a little bit, it feels almost a bit condescendingly, even though we didn't really plan that, we didn't really want that, to be honest, but it was just an unfortunate thing because we have the overhead light on her, and if she's not looking slightly upwards, right, if she doesn't tilt her head outwards, then we don't catch the light anymore, we don't create this mask around the head. So it is the lesser of both evils, so we just went ahead with it at the end of the day. Something that was really interesting that I also found upon reviewing the footage a lot of times, obviously, because AI editing, you have to review the footage a lot of times, was that her eyes are quite blacked out too. We don't see the iris, right? So we don't see any whites. It's almost as if theoretically we could mask something behind our eyes. We didn't go ahead with that at the end of the day because we felt that it didn't serve any purpose in the film. It would create too much of a jarring feeling for the first shot. Literally the first 3 to 5 seconds would be too much really. We wanted something a little bit more simple and to kind of set the premise of the film. Because at the end of the day, the film follows a narrative, it follows a storyline, and we didn't want to draw the attention away from the narrative too early. Because the way that we went about it was more subtle. We didn't have any strong storytelling aspects in there. It's really a film that's left up to your own interpretation. So that's the way that we went about it. So if we were to put things like mask around the eyes and all, it'll be a bit too much. That's why we didn't go ahead and do it. Right, so I'm gonna skip all the field shots. I'm gonna just move on to like for example, the shot after this, we have this like slow shutter thing going on in the film. The reason why I put like all of these sequence, like these clips in this sequence, was we really wanted to draw attention to only YK, but we also wanted to introduce the other dancers, the other 6 dancers. And we couldn't really find a way to do that until we realized that if we showed parts of their body, or their body, what we don't show their face, they become like these faceless people in the film, where it establishes that, hey, it's not just a solo film, it's not one person. There are other people in this film, but we don't get to pay a lot of attention to them because, number one, there's a main subject, which is YK in this shot, and you just see blurs of other people. A lot of things that happen throughout the film, the shooting process with Yoshi, is Yoshi actually improvised a lot of things. In fact, half of the shots in this film was not even planned. Some of them were complete mistakes that we just decided to put it in because it looks so nice, right? So this was one of them. We did not plan a slow shutter kind of shot. We actually had planned this sequence, which we kind of call it like the pile, like a human pile, where people were just kind of improvising around YK, and then we end up in this hand pile, right? They're kind of on top of each other. After we got that shot, we just did some like random like movements, with some prompts here and there. And as I was filming them, I was thinking like, hey, this would look really good if I did a slow shutter shot. So we just took it just in case, and it turned out so nice that we just added it in at the start of the film. So that's why this is here. Honestly, it was just like, man, why not? We have a little bit of time. We have like an extra 5-10 minutes. Let's just get the shot real quick, and it turned out really well. So that's why it's here. So after this, we have like a match cut kind of sequence. The match cut was a little bit tough because we had limited backgrounds or like locations to use the match cut, because we were very fixated on one location per shoot. So we were kind of like trying to find where are the nice angles or corners of the areas that we had to be able to create these nice backgrounds. At the end of the day, we took 2 shots on the first day, the nature shoot, and then we took another 2 shots in the studio. And I remember, because it was two separate shoot days, right? To create a good match cut, we need the subject to be placed like almost in the same area. And other than the rules of thirds that I was using with the eyeline and all, I remember using a bit of like measuring tape to kind of like on my film monitor to get the actual like physical distance. So that the next day we will have the measuring tape a little bit, and we'll be like, okay, this is how many inches or how many cm, and then we could position her nicely. At the end of the day, it's never like perfect. So there was still a little bit of like cropping and resizing. I think a bit of rotation here and there also, to just kind of like make the match cut as smooth as possible. And I'm very happy how it turned out. Even the different lighting conditions and all also. So yeah. In the film, we want to push the narrative of YK kind of like searching for something, and it manifests in a book. So in this shot, she's essentially trying to reach out and grab the book, but then she's transported somewhere else. And then she embarks on the journey to find the book again, and at the end she finds the book with the mirror inside, and that's where the film ends, and it's left to your own interpretation from there. So moving forward, we had this shot. This shot was planned, definitely, right? We wanted to introduce the book. So this is the first time you ever see the book. But we also noticed that the studio had a few book props in there. So we just wanted to kind of like put the book together so it doesn't feel like, it's just one book by itself. That would be kind of weird. But we tilted it at a slight angle to kind of like show that it's a little bit different, other than, of course, the size, the thickness, and so on and so forth. We just decorated the area a little bit, and it turned out pretty nice. Yeah, we just shot this like over the shoulder. We almost wanted to do this as a POV shot, but we felt that it would be a little bit too jarring, right? Because we don't want to put the audience directly into the subject's like point of view. We just wanted to keep it more as a third person, almost voyeuristic kind of feeling, especially in this shot because it's over the shoulder. It feels very voyeuristic with YK in this sense where she's just reaching out and we're seeing like the tension in her fingertips and seeing like as she's almost trying to grab it. So I remember directing a little bit of this part and getting her to actually hold the book, right? But of course we would cut before that. But I just wanted to see like the anticipation, the engagement of the hand and the fingers to really have that intention to hold the book. Because originally we were just doing that reach out and we would just stop before it reaches the book, but it felt very flimsy, it felt very unintentional, so we went ahead and actually did it with the actual movement of grabbing the book. So that turned out really well. So if you watch it again, you'll be able to see that there is a lot of tension around like this area, right, where it's really just going to grab the book itself. That's something that's really, really nice to me. I'm gonna skip this part, but I really, really love this sequence a lot. So I remember this. We were shooting a dance sequence in the field, right? I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but we wanted to transit back into the studio, and we were shooting a very frontal shot. The shot that I wanted in the studio was also a frontal shot. It was essentially that human pile leading to the hand pile kind of shot, right? With the dancers improvising around YK. And originally I planned it as a match cut, but Yoshi and I, we sat down and we were talking over coffee and we were saying, hey, why are we doing so many match cuts in the film? I believe we had like over 3 or 4 match cuts actually. We ended up with only that one match cut that we had over there, right? But Yoshi was saying it feels very it feels like there's no intention behind doing the match cut other than it's visually appealing. And I agree with him because it doesn't push the story and the narrative in the direction that you want it to go. It just looks, hey, it looks nice, so we just put it in. So we didn't do it in the end, and I decided to create a jarring angle, right? So playing into what I was sharing a little bit earlier about like that voyeuristic feeling, right? So we just set the tripod to the highest. I think it was almost 2 meters high, right? And then we just just tilted it down and got this like 45-degree angle-ish of the dancers in that same pile or like formation as the previous the ending of the field shot. When I was looking at this shot, like when I was editing, I was thinking about how it could have been a Dutch angle. I was thinking that it should be something super jarring, right? Really brings you out of that field, that very nice natural light look, and into something like very cold, very controlled, and once again, strong shadows on the face, strong, it's everywhere. Same thing, one overhead light only. But I didn't do it in the end, and I was thinking if I wanted to crop and rotate it in post. Resolution really doesn't matter too much to me, but I think it was more of the closeness of the shot, right? So if we were to crop and rotate, we would have this very tight kind of shot on the dancers, which I didn't want. I wanted this kind of like mid-shot kind of look on it. So we kept it as it is, but just some thoughts for like a future shot, something like this. A Dutch angle might have worked better, or I could have just taken a variation for this. So yeah, just some thoughts. We transited this into this like human pile kind of sequence. Something that was really interesting is that I was not stable for this shot at all. I was on the gimbal, but I was not stable. I think this was our second last shot already. And I was so tired that my hands were not responding to me anymore. So what we did at the end of the day was I just threw a warp stabilizer on it because of how close the proximity of the dancers and the camera in the frame. The warp didn't really work, right? So for those who know, fellow filmmakers and editors, we would see that kind of like movement, like this 3D kind of warping, the subspace warp thingy. It happened, actually, it is in the film. But something that I'm very grateful for is because the background is just blacked out, right? You have no point of reference to see this warp happening. And your only point of reference will be the other dancers, dancer on dancer. And honestly, if you're not a trained professional, you probably wouldn't be able to see it. even if you're a trained professional, I think on Instagram, because it's a little bit too small, you might not even notice it, right? Maybe on YouTube you would, and now when I'm telling you, you probably will go back and you'll be like, hey, I see the warp, right? But I would have to tell you, or you have to be actively looking for some post stabilization to be able to see it. So to me, that worked out. Like, that's fine, right? Because you have to be searching for a fault in the film to be able to find that we had this warp stabilizer thing going on. The original idea of this sequence was to just leave it as a whole, but we realized that the intensity of the shot, like the movements and all, it was platooning. It was just kind of like a straight line, right? It's constant, and we wanted to change it up a little bit. So we had a few shots, right? So we had a spare shot over here, right, where we have the dancers kind of like nodding, and then they will kind of intensify into the full body. So we added that in as like cutaways because we felt that was very nice in changing the intensity of how, you know, the pacing of the film itself and how the audience would feel, because this whole like hand sequence was like almost 20 seconds long, right? So as an audience, it would feel like almost boring to just sit there and be like, okay, dancers moving, hand going up, hand going down, and then that's it for me, right? So we have this kind of sequence to draw the attention away and then bring it back again. I think we inserted this cutaway about 3 times around there. So for the hand pal, as we continue playing, right? So for the hand pal, we kind of like see. Let me see this. Alright, yeah. So we see the hand pal like happening. Of course, we have to choreograph this. So the camera's moving up, it's going down, and over here we have this very nice little like hand tap, right? So this was, if I'm not wrong, it was done on the day itself. It was improvised, and we just found it was such a very nice touch to the ending. It felt almost like reassuring, like in the film itself as a narrative, right? So big ups, you know, for y'all for doing that. And we were thinking about a transition into the next shot, which would be the light part, right, where we kind of throw the light against the wall. And we were thinking, hey, why don't I use one of the dancers' back to kind of like create this blackout scene? And that's what we did actually. So we moved the camera behind, and then we just used a black video. We faded it in, so we, you just full blackout properly, and then we faded it out, and then we did this sequence. This sequence was not planned at all. We wanted to do this light cutting shot that I saw on Pinterest, right? And it's essentially where, you know, the whole face is like almost blacked out, and then we have strips of light. I really wanted to do that for this shot. I soon realized that it was not possible even after getting barn doors for the 300D, simply because the light was not strong enough, right? Because the ones that I saw on Pinterest are photos where they use flash. So naturally the intensity of the light is so strong that it can have this very hard difference between the light and the shadow area. It's straight light. The issue that we faced over here with the 300D and the barn doors is that there's so much diffusion around the edges. So you can see that there's a lot of like diffusion, and it's this gradient that goes into the darkness over here. So that's what we didn't really like when we kind of shone it on the dancer's face. So we were thinking, okay, you know, we are kind of panicking. We're like, okay, the shot isn't working the way that we want it to. It doesn't look nice. I want to scrap this. Are we going to replace this, or are we going to find another way to kind of like do this? So we just, we were just trying to adapt and just come up with new ideas. And I pulled the light back and it shined on the wall, and it was like, hey, actually this is kind of like a nice backdrop, right? We have this like darkness, and then we have this rectangle strip of light that just kind of looks interesting. And then we just get, hey, Mike, can you just stand over there? And you just see like, hey, this kind of works, right? We just get a mid shot and it looks kind of nice. So that's what we did. The original idea for the light cutting sequence that we wanted to do was like a routine. It was a simple routine, and then we'll just do like cuts between different groups of dancers. But it didn't feel right to just bring in the dancers in the sequence of like the film, right? From the blackout from behind the dancer's back, and then just bring in like the 7 dancers. So we had this idea to, from the darkness, we would shine the light, like we would strike. And it kind of worked out like the way that we wanted it to. And same thing, very similar to the fog. I made a mistake with the manual focus, right? I didn't use manual focus for this. So we just got YK to kind of just stand there and kind of just like improv, move a little bit before the light was even on. And then we would just go, okay, 3, 2, 1, and then light on, and then she'll just continue moving as if nothing happened. So we realized that when the light is off, naturally the autofocus will be searching for subject to focus on. And because it's fully blacked out, like it's a full black, right? It's fully dark. Can't see anything at all in the studio. The autofocus is haywire, right? It's not going in and out, but it's just focusing on nothing, infinity. So when the light strikes, right, it switches on, we see YK over there, camera immediately autofocus on her, and we created that millisecond of rack focus again that we didn't expect. And it turned out pretty nice. So once again, we added it into the film, and it felt more organic, like very unintentional, yeah, but it felt very organic and impactful for that slight second where it had that focus. And that was something that I appreciated a lot, and that's why it ended up in the film at the end of the day. So yeah, just kind of having the dancers move, and something that I really liked was that shadows, right? Because it leads very nicely into the next scene where we took out the bandos, we just flooded the entire wall. We did a whitewash on the wall, and it just shot these like shadows. Now the interesting thing is that these shadows, so we had this wall over here, right? And then the camera was shooting actually slightly 45 degrees, and we had to position the dancers in front of the light to create this kind of like depth. The thing about the shadows is that when we shoot them, right, so you can see how the bodies aren't exactly like, it doesn't look properly like proportionate on as a shadow. It looks a little bit stretched out in that sense. So that's kind of like the look that we went for. As we felt, it was really interesting how we could shape your perception, the perspective and the depth of the shot if we position the camera differently. Because right now it feels that the camera is perpendicular to the wall, but it's not. It's a 45-degree angle, which creates a contrast and a look, different look in the shadows that we shot. So that's something that's really interesting for us. And same thing, we used a similar technique that we used in the human power, hand power sequence, where we just did cutaways to change up, like, the intensity and all of the movements. So these 3 shots that we did over here, right, these reverse shots, unplanned completely. So we were editing, and when my original idea was just kind of to extend that shadow sequence and just keep it going until we would, transit into the next shot. But we realized that the same thing, the intensity thing wasn't the way that we wanted it to. So Yoshi just had this idea to reverse certain sections of the film, and it turned out really well. So once again, it's a lot of improvisation and just like random coming up with stuff, and it worked out in our favor because we were just tinkering and experimenting as we went along. So that's just something that I was really happy about. So I think that's kind of it for all of the studio shots, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So I think all in all, regarding like the studio shots, it's really, really fun to be able to play with lights and to shape it. I think definitely my favorite shot would be the top-down shots, right? Because of the definition on the face and how dramatic it looked. Definitely would explore more in the future. I think that's something that warrants a lot of more ideas and more exploration. And we will probably see how we can play more than just a spotlight effect, and what if we had diffused it a little bit better. Like, it wouldn't be as harsh, but what kind of effect could we create from it? So that's essentially it for the film breakdown for the studio section. I'm going to be running through the nature, the field sections in another video, so stay tuned and check it out when it comes out. I'll see you guys soon.